so this is a forelimb. Why?
I was like,
Oh yeah, it's the front forelimbs D-shaped and the hind limbs O-shaped.
Okay, so that's going to be the cross section through your metacarpal.
like this right here.
Yeah.
So your metacarpal is here, so you can't use that to tell whether this is a forelimb or hind limb on this specimen. But what is this region right here? Right, this is a carpus, and here's an accessory carpal bone. So this is the forelimb, just in case he puts it on the exam.
Okay, so if you can't see the accessory bone or the calcaneus, and you have this, how can you tell?
It's an O-shape.
Yeah, so the shape. So what would this be?
Like a hind limb.
Hind limb, because it's more like an O, right?
Yes. So remember, that just applies to the metacarpal bone, not any other areas, okay? So if this was the forelimb, what shape would this be?
A D.
It'd be a D, not an L, right? Okay. So, basically these specimens are kind of just like everything dried on them. So they have tendons, ligaments, vessels, and nerves. So these are really good to go through to get your head around it. So what would this be right here? Yes. So we said this is the forelimb. So this is your common digital extensor. Does that make sense?
And where does that insert?
Process?
Yep,
Yes.
of what bone?
P3.
Yep, you're right. The extensor process of P3, so that's going to be within the hook capsule.
Yeah. So this is your common digital extensor. This is your accessory carpal bone. What position is the accessory carpal bone on the limb?
He said it was more medial today.
So it would be lateral and palmar, right?
Okay, Dave Carr.
So that's how you orient yourself. This side is lateral. So what is this guy right here?
The lateral digital extensor.
This would be the lateral digital extensor. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, so these right here are actually vessels and nerves that are dried on this specimen. Okay? So if he tagged this in an exam, what would it be?
So what is the most cranial structure?
Vein.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anyone want to tell me the order of the arteries, veins, and nerves in this region?
The VAN.
Yeah, so we have from dorsal to caudal, basically, is vein, artery, nerve. What other part of the body has this arrangement of vessels and nerves? The intercostal veins, artery, and nerve, okay? So we said, what would this be? Yeah, so this is a vein, but which one? Not palmar, but
It's the digital one?
digital, yeah. So I'll tell you how I orient myself. So anything under the fetlock joint, which is this joint right here, is digital because it's supplying the digits. Yes. So this could be, he said you can use either one. This would be medial palmar digital artery or medial digital artery. He didn't care for us, but I would just double check. What's this one right here? The next one, caudal. Yeah, so this is your artery. So what would be the full name of it? Yeah. So the medial palmar digital artery or medial digital artery. Okay, and then this is?
Medial palmar nerve.
Yeah, so medial palmar digital nerve or medial digital nerve. Does that make sense to everyone? So it's all about orienting yourself with stuff like this. If it's under the fetlock, it's digital. Again, you have your accessory carpal bone, so you know this side is lateral, and therefore this side is medial. Right? So use all those landmarks to figure out where you are.
So if we moved up the limb a little bit, and we wanted to name this nerve, what would we call it right here?
Medial palmar nerve.
Yeah, just medial palmar nerve. So then once we pass the fetlock, it's going to be medial palmar digital nerve.
Does that make sense to everyone? Because in an exam, like on the lab exam, he's not going to ask you to go through the whole pathway of nerves in your head. He's going to tag one single one of these at a station, and you have to figure out what it is. So So you have to orient yourself quickly and know what it is. Okay?
So besides the palmar digital nerve, what other nerve are we going to see in this area, and how can we differentiate them? Yeah, so we have the medial palmar metacarpal nerve. And where do we find that? Yeah, it's going to be deep to the suspensory ligament. So we would have to transect this or dig underneath it to see it. So that's how you differentiate them.
Not in these guys, but you'd be able to find it on the wet specimen. You could, yeah. Any of these are taggable material. So, again, if it has metacarpal in the name for the forelimb, or metatarsal in the name for the hind limb, that means it's deep because it's right up against those bones. That's how I think about it. So remember, your palmar nerves are different to your palmar metacarpal nerves. The palmar metacarpal nerves are deep to the interosseous muscle, right up against the bone, even though all of those nerves are in the same area. Does that make sense? So on an exam, if he wanted to tag one of the metacarpal nerves, he would have to cut the interosseous muscle to get to it. So you'd be able to see if it was deep or more superficial. Does that make sense?
Or you would just have to dig underneath it, because you could theoretically tag it under there. You would have to be moving something out of the way for sure.
Okay, so this is kind of hard to tell what the hell I'm pointing at, but if he tagged this on an exam, what would you guys say this would be?
The dorsal branch of this. Oh, fuck.
Yes. So this is actually a venous plexus. That one's really dried out as well. So you have 3 venous plexuses in the hoof. What are they?
The coronary venous plexus, interdigital venous plexus.
So you have your coronary,
Whatever.
which again is up in this region, like by your coronary band, makes sense. And then you have your dorsal venous plexus, which would be under this hoof wall in the dorsal area. And then you would have your palmar venous plexus. Sorry? So, yeah, so the solar surface is here. So this is where your, what did I just say? Palmar venous plexus will be. So what is the importance of these venous plexuses in the hoof? Sorry?
The anastomosis.
Yeah, so they're valveless, they don't have valves, and what does that mean?
The anastomosis. Blood flow out of direction.
Yeah, so did he tell you that a horse has 5 hearts or whatever? Did he go through that with you yet?
It's going to be so impressive. You guys, do you remember this?
Okay, so basically these venous plexuses act like a heart in a weird way. So, it's hard to explain. So when the horse is not putting pressure on this limb, the venous plexuses are going to fill with blood, right? So that allows better perfusion to the limb. When the horse puts pressure on the limb, it's going to squeeze these venous plexuses and push the blood back out of the limb. So basically, if the horse is not getting enough exercise, then the blood can stagnate in these venous plexuses, and you can get laminitis and all sorts of secondary problems to that. So that's why it's important to, one of the reasons it's important to make sure that horses get enough exercise. Does that make sense to everyone? I believe he tagged, I think, the coronary venous plexus on this specimen on our exam. So just make sure you know what you're looking at on this, because he never showed it to us. We kind of just came in and went through them and figured it out on our own. Okay? Okay, so if he tagged this in an exam, what would you guys say this is? Yes, this is your extensor retinaculum. So you're on the extensor surface of the limb, and it's this band of connective tissue that's holding all of those extensor tendons together. Okay? What would, okay, we did that. What would this be right here? Yes. So this is your extensor carpi radialis muscle because it's stopping at the carpus. Extensor carpi radialis extends the carpus, so that's where it attaches to. Does that make sense?
Yep.
What would this one be? Yes. So this is your oblique carpal extensor muscle, or extensor carpi obliquus, or whatever the other name is. It's moving obliquely.
Is that superficial to the extensor carpi radialis?
Yes. It's running over the top. Yeah. Are you guys comfortable with that?
Hmm?
So that's pretty much what we wanted to show you with that one. Okay, so just quick review again. Well, is this a forelimb or a hind limb, first of all? It's a forelimb? Why? The what? Nope.
And the accessory
Remember, that's
carpal.
only for your metacarpal
okay.
region, which you can't see on this guy.
So accessory carpal
Yeah,
bone.
so you have your accessory carpal bone. This is a carpus, so this is a forelimb. Okay?
So just to compare, guys, this is your calcaneus bone. Okay, so that's way bigger than your accessory. And another way you can tell is the fact that the joints in the hind limb are going in opposite directions, right? So if you flex the carpus and the fetlock, they're going to move in the same direction. It's flexion and flexion. Whereas in the hind limb, if you flex the hock, you're going to be extending the fetlock. Does that make sense? Okay.
So this is the forelimb, like we said. If he tagged this in an exam, just went through this, where is it inserting?
On the carpus.
It's inserting on the carpus, so what muscle is this?
Extensor carpi radialis.
This is your extensor carpi radialis muscle. Just a piece of it is left. So what would this be? It's banded tissue.
Extensor retinaculum.
Yep, extensor retinaculum. This guy? Yes. So this is the common digital extensor muscle. If this were a hind limb, what would this muscle be called?
Long digital extensor.
Long digital extensor muscle. That's one of the reasons it's important to be able to tell forelimb from hind limb apart. Okay? So common digital extensor muscle. This one be? Lateral digital extensor muscle, because your accessory carpal bone is lateral and palmar, so this is the lateral side of the limb. Lateral digital extensor. What is this guy right here? Super important.
Is that the ligament of the earth? No.
So I heard someone say suspensory ligament, and that's one name for it.
Interosseous.
Interosseous muscle is another name for it. And what's the other name? Yeah, the proximal sesamoidean ligament.
So these are your proximal sesamoid bones, and this interosseous muscle attaches to them. So that's why it's also known as the proximal sesamoidean ligament. So 3 different names for the same thing. You have to know all 3 names. So what are the 3 names for this again? Anyone? Suspensory ligament,
Interosseous ligament
interosseous muscle,
for muscle.
or the proximal sesamoidean ligament. Okay?
Is the bottom part the distal sesamoid, like past the?
Yes.
Yeah, so proximal sesamoidean ligament ends about at the level of the sesamoids, and all of the distal sesamoidean ligaments are going to be coming from there down.
So if he tagged either one of these on an exam, what would you guys call that?
Split something.
Yes. So again, you're on the extensor surface of the limb. So these are your extensor slips of the interosseous muscle. So if you follow your interosseous muscle, you can see that these are actually branching off of the interosseous muscle. So extensor slips of interosseous muscle. Yes.
Slips like a boat slip?
Slip. S-L-I-P.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what function do they serve?
The actus collateral ligament?
Overextension.
Yep, exactly. They prevent overextension of the fetlock joint.
So they attach to the common digital extensor in the forelimb, or the long digital extensor in the hind limb, and they prevent overextension of the limb. You can see the way they're situated. If the limb tries to bend too much, like this way, these ligaments are going to keep it in place.
What does it do in
So
the
it's
hind
super
limb?
important. Sorry?
What does it do in the hind limb?
It has the same function,
Oh,
but
okay.
it'll join to the long digital extensor muscle, because there is no common digital extensor in the hind limb, right? Okay, so what did we say these were?
Proximal sesamoid bones.
Yeah, so these are your proximal sesamoid bones. If he tagged right here, in between the 2 sesamoid bones, what would you guys call that?
That's the ligament of the earth.
So intersesamoidean ligament. Inter means between, so it's the ligament between the two sesamoid bones.
Do you guys know another name for that? Yep, the scutum.
Proximal scutum. S-C-U-T-U-M. And I remember this being tagged on our final, and then, you know, he puts the answers out after. When we checked, he accepted either one, proximal scutum or intersesamoidean ligament. He didn't care. So you can use either one. Okay, so now we're on the distal part of the limb. So we said our interosseous muscle is also known as what?
Suspensory ligament or proximal sesamoidean ligament.
So suspensory ligament or proximal sesamoidean ligament. And then there's a bunch of distal sesamoidean ligaments. Okay? So if we tag this one right here, what would this be called? Yes. So this is the most superficial one. So it's called superficial or straight distal sesamoidean ligament. Okay? Then there's this one on either side, deep to the superficial one. What is this called? Yeah, so this is the middle distal sesamoidean ligament or oblique distal sesamoidean ligament. So a lot of these have two names. Again, know both names for each one. So those are really the only ones you can see here, but there's two that are deeper. Do you guys know what they're called? Yeah. So there's one that crosses like this. So that one's called cruciate or deep. And then the other one is called short distal sesamoidean ligament. But those are basically kind of, I don't know how to explain it. Like they attach to the joint, I guess. Really, really deep.
What's the one in the middle?
But you can see right here?
Yeah.
So this would be your middle or oblique.
No, you mean the one in the middle?
The one in
This one? Superficial or straight?
straight, not straight.
Yeah. Because it's the most superficial and it runs straight.
Straight or straight?
down.
Do they all come from the same spot?
Yes, I think so.
Roughly, they're all coming from the proximal sesamoid bones.
So basically
So this
all
whole
of these sesamoidean ligaments are functioning to give support to the fetlock joint. Why?
Because most lambda supers there?
Yeah, well, the fetlock is the most stressed joint in the equine limb. Because if you think of how a horse stands, this is going to be constantly extended. So this joint is always under a lot of pressure, and that's why you need all of these ligaments to support it. If not, the horse will just overextend and hurt itself. Okay? Okay. He tagged, I think, both of these distal sesamoidean ligaments as well, but on the wet specimens. He didn't tag the cruciate or the short because we couldn't see them, but if one of your classmates finds one, he'll probably tag it, so make sure you see it.
Rip it off.
Okay? Are you guys comfortable with those?
Yeah.
Again, all the stuff we're saying, like you really, really have to know. There's no getting around it for this part, okay? So come in here, work with these specimens, go through it. Okay, so if he stuffs a piece of paper in here, what would this region be called? Yes. So this is the carpal canal. Do you guys know the boundaries of the carpal canal? Can you still not go through this with you guys? Yes. So laterally, we have the accessory carpal bone. Do you guys know what this region would be right here? The roof of the carpal canal? That one. Yeah. So this is your palmar carpal ligament, which is an extension of the joint capsule, basically. Yes.
What is it called?
Palmar carpal ligament. And then what's this little piece of tissue right here? Think about where it is. What surface of the limb are we on?
Palmar.
Yeah, so this is what? Yeah, so this is what remains of your flexor retinaculum. This little thing right here. So if you look at that, your palmar carpal ligament, your accessory carpal bone, and your flexor retinaculum form this canal right here. And that's your carpal canal. That is super important because a bunch of important structures pass through there. Do you guys know what passes through this canal? Yeah, so you have both your digital flexor muscles, superficial and deep. What else? Which nerves? Based on what we just said. Yes. So I think that would actually be your palmar nerves. Because remember, in this region, everything is palmar. So your palmar nerves will pass through the carpal canal.
When did you change to palmar? Like in the carpal area?
Ish. Yeah. I mean, you would never type them in the canal itself. Just know that those nerves pass through there. Are you guys good with that?
Yep.
That's really important as well. Okay. I think that's everything. Looks good.